And I think the buying cycle or the buying decision for people is now simply protracted. It used to be, here's my information on whether you want to purchase or not. They decide, and it's a yes or no, and that's it. You move on. Now it's this, you use the phrase nurturing. It's a lead nurturing proposition where some of that even happens after the initial purchase. So because I also have month-to-month payments, I consider it a 3, 6, or 12-month option, but they can pay monthly. As you said, there's a discount for that, but there's nothing that would prevent them from literally bailing. I'm not going to take them to a small claims court or hire an attorney. It's just gone, right? So it's incumbent upon us to, give them that, just no reason to say no. I never want price to be a reason to say no. And then it's up to me to make sure I earn their trust for them to stay.
And that's where, when I do the interview process of the 6 and 12-month option, if they seem really dedicated and they're like really a good person, they seem genuine, we gel really well, then I totally change the whole options of what I offer. It becomes a difference.
And a legacy client, someone that you've had for years, you might also be discounting them heavily. Making
definitely.
Exactly. And if you get a referral from someone or a spouse, I like to give the option for a lot of discounts along the way because, the cost of having a client can change drastically based on who they are.
And I think it's important to consider, breaking down things. We're going to talk later on in this video series about add-on things, other aspects you can throw into your business. But I have found it's easier for people to say, okay, I'm going to trust you with my nutrition. Then you develop that relationship, and then it's like, oh yeah, hey, let's. Now I have the mental bandwidth and maybe the financial trust to work on training or something else. We used to even have posing as a separate service that they could add on to and get all kinds of amazing one-on-one service. But let's move over into the programming. So we're gonna spend a good chunk of this video series talking about the science of nutrition. We're gonna review macronutrients, energy balance, all of that. We're definitely gonna talk a lot about peak week and that whole process. But for today's discussion about programming, let's just go through the mechanics of what that looks like. So I've done this in so many different ways, but I have evolved to the point where I feel like less is better initially, and maybe that's why you do your videos. Instead of just a 2-hour video of how to be a client of Tyler, it's these daily chunks.
A lot of it is FAQ. I get all the questions out of the way. I like in the videos. That's a big reason why.
I remember sending packets of information where it's like, here's your initial program, and then here's all this explanation of how to do this, and then here's what you're going to need for your next step. And now I simply tell them, okay, I'm going to send you a framework first. This explains how your program includes a macronutrient profile. I talk to them about how I want to set up some meal planning, and I give them instructions for what these next steps will be. But it's not, here's your program, and that's all you need. Now we're just off to regular check-ins and progress. I consider the onboarding process sequential, kind of like you, Tyler. But I give them that, see what their response is, their questions. Then I start working on some meal planning because I want to work on structure and flexibility. And then by the time we get to maybe the 3rd or 4th day, we're really off and running. So I'll let you go first, Paul. Talk about your entire onboarding process. Now you've got that intake back. And now how do you give them their initial programming, and what does that first week look like?
Yeah, so the most important thing is kind of making sure that there's accuracy in that intake form. Oftentimes someone will say, I'm taking in roughly 2,000 calories, or I'm taking in roughly 3,000 calories, and I might ask them for more detail. So that's the first step with me and I feel the only true accurate representation of a person's intake is not through a formula, not through a calculation, not through age and weight and experience. It's making them do a diet recall, making them put the work in. If you can get someone to track their diet for 4 or 5 days a week, you know that they are invested into working with you. If they go, oh, I don't want to do that, that's not a good client for me, in my opinion. Because if they're not going to track their diet to get started, what's going to keep them accountable throughout the process? So if they're not giving me accurate representations, which a lot of people do now because macros have become a lot more trendy than years ago, then I'm going to start putting in my formulations in my head. What is their goal? Weight loss, muscle building, contest prep. what are their calories, macro ranges. I'm going to give them my specific, this is where I'm at, this is where I want your protein, your carbs, your fats, give them kind of a fiber goal. Depending on what type of program, they might have training and rest day, they might have a refeed schedule, they might not. Based on their goal, I'm going to set up their cardio schedule based on what type of cardio they've indicated they like and don't like, where they're at with body fat, where they're at with goal, schedule, time considerations, what's their lifestyle like, how much time do they have to commit to the gym, and then I'm going to set all that up, put that in a format that it's been developed over years. So, I considered it a bad program if I sent it to them and got 8 emails back with questions. What about water intake? What about sodium intake? When do I train? When do I do my cardio? So over years you develop, explanations like, this is your cardio plan. Please execute it at your leisure on these days if best would be possible. These are your macronutrient goals. This is how I would foresee you setting it up. I've actually created a website for my clients to go to where they can plug in their macros, the time of the day they wake up, the time of the day they train, and how many meals they want to hit. And it will give them a basic layout of their macronutrients for the day. That solved a lot of problems for me because one of the first things people would say is, this is too much, it's total overwhelming. I can eat whatever I want and just hit these goals. When should I eat? So I found that information would kind of throw people off, and sometimes it would just disappear. So I try to give them some structure, some semblance of, this is what I think is ideal. But if you have a better approach, if you get up at 4 a.m. and you don't like to eat till 8 a.m., that's okay. But this is how I would break up if it was me. And then once I give them that information, I give them a little welcome video, and then we're off and running. And I find that most of the time, I don't hear from them right away. It takes a week before they have any questions. Whereas, initially, a couple of years ago, it might have been questions right back at it.
Is that a welcome video that you're recording just for them,
Yep.
or is it something you have?
And again, that goes with technology that's now available, right? So I have a tool in my email that I can click a button and record. So it literally takes me almost no time when I'm putting their training, nutrition, whatever plans I'm sending them in an email. Click a button. Hey, John.
Stepping up my game after this. You guys are schooling me here. I like it.
You already started to do it. You sent a couple of video emails.
Yeah, but I like this. I like. Well, it's so much more personal by having that video with the initial programming, and then it's something I'm going to start doing.
Especially just hearing their name. Hey, John. What it actually is to me.
So you can even do this when people inquire. I don't do it very often, but sometimes I'll get an inquiry and I'll send a video back. Hey, I got your inquiry. I'm looking it over. I'd like to set up a time to talk. Here's a link to my schedule. They know right there. There's not many people going to do that. Like that's a serious coach that's going to take care of them. So depending on where you're at with your coaching business, if you're still developing it and building the client base, look at the opportunities that you have. You and I and Tyler don't have as much time as someone that has no clients, but we're still going to try to outwork those people with no clients, right? So that's the way I would look at that as an opportunity.
So something you said, I think I have a feeling that you're going to do this in spades better than all of us. But one of the things you said is, you give them that macronutrient profile, and sometimes somebody would just feel overwhelmed, like, okay, this is a set of numbers, I don't know what this is. And so I noticed that probably halfway through my career, which I used to, when a client would come to me, I intentionally gave them the macronutrient profile, because before me, like, this didn't exist. This is one of the things that I pioneered through my own approach in experimental coaching, as I'm trying to decide, how these clients, just one at a time. It wasn't like I thought, I'm going to create this whole field of coaching. It was just one client at a time. How can I make them successful? And so I knew, at least in my head, I thought I knew, was that if I could get them doing the work then, if I could get them to go to a food count site or food count resource book, back then was easier actually, because those websites and apps just weren't as prolific as they are now. But if I could get them doing that the first time, then the habit is built. So I would intentionally, when they would have questions, I say, nope, you figure it out. You know what the foods you like. You know your time schedule. I don't. So you go figure that out. And the people who did that, of course, did well, because mission accomplished. They went through the exercise and it became a habit. They realized they now have that skill. Other people, I'm sure, I just pissed them off and they left.
Yeah.
So now that I'm responsible for more than 150 Diet Doc program owners and coaches around the world, and I've got just a much broader experience, I realize, well, you know what? Some people just aren't ready for that. Some people just need a step or two and we all need some structure, right? I don't. When I was helping my son change